my phone is showing a message that says multiple calls.
Well, we are getting an echo from you, so I'd say unless anybody's having any audio difficulties, let's proceed because I think it's working. Can you hear us fine without any distortion?
Yes. No, there's no distortion.
Excellent. Why don't we get started? And I see we're now on live YouTube, so thank you for that, Ryan. And we'll call this meeting to order of the Monterey Peninsula Unified School District Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, 5:15 p.m. And why don't we start, Heidi, you could call the roll for the committee members.
Kevin Dayton.
Here.
Carmel York.
Here.
Dorothy Emerson.
Here.
Richard Pagnello. Don Avila. Adam Gonzalez. Ethelyn Thomas.
Here.
Jermaine Jones. Here. You have a quorum.
Great, and let's have the staff quickly introduce yourselves going down the list here on our agenda. We're starting with Ryan.
Good evening, everyone. Ryan Altemeyer, Associate Superintendent of Business Services.
Heidi Gaddy, Administrative Assistant, Business Services.
Paul Anderson, Senior Director of Capital Facilities Program.
Great, and we all, go ahead.
Jody Shizzle, Accounting Analyst, working with the bond.
Excellent. And we also have Devin Lincoln, who's going to be talking on agenda item C here. Introduction of new members. Thanks to board action, we now have a few vacancies filled. And the first person we want to introduce is Dorothy Emerson, representing the business community for Marina. And Ms. Emerson, if you want, you could just spend 10-15 seconds talking about your background.
Well, I've lived in Marina for over 35 years, been very involved with the schools. We have a financial services business here in Marina for specific financial services, and we're involved with the Marina Foundation as well. So we've got our hands in all kinds of different pies, so, but very much involved, and also very involved with Marina High School and what goes on there. So
great. Well, thank you for serving the community and the district in this role. And also, well, Richard Pagnello is a new member as well, but he's not present tonight. But we have a third new appointee, Jermaine Jones, Community at Large, Monterey. Ms. Jones, if you want to give a brief introduction of yourself.
Am I going to be on camera?
You're not on camera, but they can hear you.
Hi, I'm actually in the district offices. That's why you don't see me online. My children went to Monterey High School. I have a history as in governance with a charter school for many years. I live very close to Monterey High School, and so all of those things brought me to be interested in the Community Oversight Committee.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Now we will move to general public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the Board of Education on matters within the jurisdiction of the board but not in this agenda may do so during the public comment period for up to 3 minutes. Comments submitted by the public who are not in physical attendance at this meeting will be read aloud by the chair. Spoken comments will only be accepted from members of the public who are in physical attendance at the meeting site noted above. Do we have anyone present physically for public comment?
Nobody physically present.
Did we receive any comments submitted by the public?
No public comments were received.
All right, let's move on to item D, review and adopt minutes of the August 13th, 2020 Citizens Bond Oversight Committee meeting.
Move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second on that? I'll second the minutes. all in favor to accept the minutes?
Aye.
All opposed?
You'll probably have to do a roll call for that.
Okay, we will not do a voice vote, we will do a roll call. Heidi, would you do a roll call, please?
Kevin Dayton,
Aye.
from New York,
Aye.
Dorothy Emerson,
Abstain.
Richard Pagnello, John Avila, Adam Gonzalez, Ethelyn Thomas,
Aye.
Jermaine Jones.
Thanks.
All right, minutes are adopted. We move to item E, review of Citizens Oversight Committee roles and responsibilities with Devin Lincoln of Lozano Smith Law Firm, and you're the school district's counsel, correct?
Yes,
Very
I am.
good.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Carry on.
Great. Okay. Well, Heidi, I think, is going to run my slideshow. But as she's doing that, I'll just introduce myself. I'm, as Kevin says, I'm Devin Lincoln. I'm an attorney with Lozano Smith. We have an office on 68. Although I've been working remotely since March, like a lot of us. But I co-chair the firm's Facilities and Business Practice Group, and spend most of my time doing things having to do with construction, bidding, solar, SQL, all kinds of things like that. So that's kind of my background. Been doing it for a while. So, and so what I'm going to do is a presentation that those members of the committee who have been on the committee for some time saw me do pretty much the same presentation with a couple of omissions back in February, I believe. And when I say omissions, that was because at the time we had newly approved changes to the committee's bylaws. And so the version of the presentation that I gave in February, I went over those changes. I elected to leave that stuff out this time, since the bylaws are hopefully a known quantity even to the new members, or if you haven't read them yet and you have any questions, certainly by all means let the district staff know. I can always help with that. Okay, so I'm going to talk today about what a Citizens Oversight Committee is and does, what its role is and what its role is not. And then I'm going to cover some basics related to the Brown Act, because this body is governed by the Brown Act, which is California's open meeting law. So as you all are able to make sure that you're spotting issues raised by the Brown Act, if you have questions about it, hopefully I can answer those here. So, okay. So the Citizens Oversight Committee is a creature of the Education Code. It was this was an option for districts beginning in 2001 with the passage of Prop 39, which gave districts the ability to pass local school bond measures by a 55% vote rather than a 66% vote of the public if the district also voluntarily agreed to do certain things with respect to oversight of the expenditures of funds raised under a Prop 39 bond. And chief among those things is the creation of a committee like this. So the Education Code section 15278 might be worth a quick read for all of you. It sets forth the requirements that Prop 39 imposes with respect to the use of a committee like this. And because the district elected to seek a Prop 39 bond and a 55% threshold for election, the Citizens Oversight Committee is a necessary and important part of overseeing the funds raised from the public under that bond measure. So I can go back to, I think I'm missing a slide here, slide number 2. I think it's like on the prior page. There we go. Okay. So the Ed Code lays out 3 key purposes of this committee. And that is to inform the public and advise the public regarding the district expenditure of bond revenues. And perhaps overlapping those 2 categories to review and report on those expenditures. I'm going to say this more than once tonight, but the purpose of the committee is to ensure that expenditures made by the district are consistent with the language that was put before the voters. It is not to determine what would or would not be an appropriate expenditure of bond funds. That's a role reserved to the school board. So this is the term advisory would probably not be applicable here. You're not a body that advises the board, for instance. Your role is public facing and to inform the public about what those expenditures are. Later tonight, you're going to do one of the most important things we'll do all year, which is to approve the annual report. So we'll talk about that obligation in a minute here. That's the primary way by which this body communicates with the public regarding the district's expenditures of bond funds. The statute goes on to identify certain activities that the committee may engage in. Although, as you know, we typically shape any of these activities through, what are the things that the board and the superintendent or his staff are asking that the committee become involved in, on top of, if at all, the statutory obligations that you have. So, for instance, reviewing annual performance and financial audit, review the district's efforts to maximize bond proceeds, inspecting grounds, of course, always doing so with permission of superintendent and site staff. These are some of the other things that the committee may do in addition to the things that it's required to do. Typically, this committee, though, is focused very much on reviewing expenditures and asking appropriate questions about those expenditures. I'll mention real quickly here, just in case you're wondering, the statute enumerates that you might review deferred maintenance plans, but the law has evolved in the past few years such that districts no longer maintain deferred maintenance plans. Has to do with the way we flexed funds during the last recession. So it's kind of an artifact on there, not something that you would be asked to do.
Evan, I will interrupt here. If somebody has a man speaking in the background, if you could put yourself on mute, please, that would be helpful.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so slide 4, the bottom of the left-hand side of your screen. The committee's role as an oversight body is to ensure that bond revenues are only used for construction, reconstruction, rehabilitation, or replacement of school facilities. Furnishings are permitted. Acquisition, lease, also permitted of real property. And certain salaries, not teacher and administrator salaries, or personnel who are unrelated to construction under the bond, but salaries of folks whose role is to support the district in its work with the bond program. And so that would include Mr. Anderson and Jody. And so certain salaries are permissible expenditures under the bond, but certainly the lion's share of what you're going to see in your reports is going to be construction costs, reconstruction costs, some furnishing and equipment costs. All of those things are appropriate expenditures and are what you should be seeing coming forward from the district. Slide 5, there's certain things that, there are many things that are outside the committee's scope. Certainly participating in bidding or award of contracts, determining how bond funds will be spent. I mentioned that one already. And helping the board to shape priorities. That's a job reserved to the board. Any activities participate relative to actually selling the bonds or ensuring that the funds are there. Again, that comes back to district staff outside of your purview. As I said before, and I only mentioned this one in more than one place because it's important for safety purposes. Certainly, if you have a desire to review the district's work, would suggest that you can contact Ryan to arrange or Paul to arrange any kind of visit that you might want to make. But again, it's not essential role of this committee. The real focus is going to be on the expenditures.
I'll mention here, the committee just had a tour of job sites last week. So we are going beyond the minimum and looking at the sites and seeing the good things that are happening.
Yeah, Ryan told me that. And I think field trips are fun. I think that's great. Yeah. So, but it does also help you get a visual of what's going on. And I think that's really important. Really important. And it also helps back to that advisory role of advising the public. It helps, for the committee to be able to talk about what's really happening up there. Because most people, unless you have kids at a particular site, you're not necessarily seeing all that stuff up close. So.
Yeah, it was good. I tweeted out a bunch of photos from the new science center at Monterey High School and got a lot of hits on it. People were interested to see what was going on in there.
Yeah, that's really cool. One of the reasons I like doing facilities work, because it's something very concrete that happens for kids and it can have a real impact. So it really can. Yeah. So, all right, great. So, a couple of limitations, a couple things to be aware of, although at this part of the presentation, I always say the likelihood of you being involved in a conflict of interest is small given the nature of your role. But this committee is subject to laws regarding conflicts of interest that are applicable to public officials, including Government Code Section 1090 and the Political Reform Act of 1974. Briefly speaking, Government Code Section 1090 applies to the making of contracts by a public agency. So much so that, for instance, for the elected school board members, where one of them, say, to have a construction company, be the principal at a construction company, then and that construction company bid on the job in front of the district, it would not be sufficient for that board member to recuse him or herself. Under 1090, it is impermissible for a body having an elected official on it who has a financial interest in that contract to then approve that contract. So that would be a violation of 1090. Because you, as a body, do not have the authority to approve contracts, it's highly unlikely you would find yourself in a situation where you would be potentially running afoul of Government Code Section 1090. However, it does apply to the activities of this committee. Secondly, Political Reform Act of 1974 is broader. It's not confined to the making of contracts. It applies to situations where public officials, and this is defined more broadly than just elected school board members, the superintendent, certain administrative staff will be subject to the Political Reform Act. And it has to do with whether or not you have a financial interest in business before the district. So again, this kind of situation will come up with, say, a good example of this would be a elected board member has a spouse who applies for a job as a teacher, right? And in what circumstances would there be a conflict of interest in that board member making decisions regarding salaries, et cetera? That would be the kind of example that comes up under Political Reform Act. Again, given the fact that your role is advisory to the public, an oversight role, not a decision-making body, the likelihood of a Political Reform Act violation is very small, which is good, but it's something to be aware of. So, okay. Any questions on this page before we move on to the next set of slides? Okay, great. Okay, and now I'm going to talk about the Brown Act. If you're not familiar with the Brown Act, it is a body of law that governs how California public bodies undertake their meetings, just like this one. California prides itself on having one of the most, or not the most, robust open meeting law, and it parallels our Public Records Act, both of which are time-honored tools in California law that give the public the right and the ability to understand how government is conducted in their name, and both of which are enshrined in California law, in quite extensive law on both such bills. The open meeting law requires that activities of this body and other Brown Act bodies take place in a public manner such that the public can observe and participate in the actions of local government. There are certain, and I'm going to talk about these in a minute, certain exceptions for closed session in which members of the public would not attend. But otherwise, under the Brown Act, the presumption is that the business of a legislative body, a local legislative body, is going to be taking place in public. Who is subject to the Brown Act? Certainly elected legislative bodies such as school boards, city councils, water district boards, all of those bodies are clearly subject to the Brown Act. Many committees and subordinate bodies such as this one are also subject to the Brown Act. The only exception are those committees that we consider to be ad hoc in nature, meaning that they don't have a standing schedule. They are convened with limited subject matter jurisdiction and don't have a regular meeting schedule. But most, sorry, I should also say the other requirements that they're not appointed by the board directly. So for instance, an example of that would be if the superintendent convened a group of individuals to advise on facilities needs in the district, for instance. That would be an ad hoc committee that would not be a board appointed legislative body or committee that would be subject to the Brown Act. But most of the other committees that are formed with or without board member participation, such as this one doesn't have board members on it, still a committee subject to the Brown Act. So what does the Brown Act require? It requires, as I've said, that actions of this body and deliberations be taken openly and in public. Of course, since March, we've all had a very different understanding of how that happens. I mean, once upon a time, as I think Kevin was referencing a little while ago, we would all be in that room at the district office conducting this meeting. And it's only since the coronavirus crisis that we've had the ability to do remote meetings like this one. We've all spent way more time than we needed to on Zoom. Meetings ought to be public and available and accessible to the public as well. One of the ways that we make meetings accessible is to post our agendas and attachments in advance, 72 hours in advance of a meeting for a regular meeting, as in one that's been regularly scheduled, and 24 hours for any special meetings. And so the requirement there is that the agenda be made available, and then any attachments that go to the members of the committee are also made available to the public at the same time. And then, of course, the Brown Act requires that the agenda be posted not just in physical locations, but also on the district's website. Okay, great. So one question that comes up a lot under the Brown Act is, what is a meeting? Because it doesn't just have to be something that is scheduled and agendized. A meeting can occur, and this is one of the things you want to be most aware of, a meeting can occur anywhere at any time that a majority of board members or committee members are present or telephonically present at the same time and place to hear, discuss, or deliberate any item within that body's jurisdiction. So, you know, I have advised a board that has 3 members, 2 of whom are brothers-in-law, for instance. And I always wondered what happened at Thanksgiving dinner so that they could be sure they weren't discussing district business, for instance. So that could have been a Brown Act violation. Both those individuals were always very careful about that kind of thing, but you know, that could happen. So a meeting can take place even if we don't have it formally scheduled. So it's best to be careful about your contact with other members of this committee. Individual contact, you run into each other at the grocery store, you see each other picking up your kids from school, not going to be construed as a meeting. Attending conferences together, attending community meetings together, even if perhaps a quorum of this body were to all be present at, say, a school board meeting, so long as you are not engaged in discussions or deliberations of business within this committee's jurisdiction, not likely to be construed as a violation of the Brown Act. But it is also important to be aware that it is possible to violate the Brown Act by engaging in serial communications to arrive at a consensus. Now, again, because this body's decision-making authority is fairly limited, you're unlikely to run afoul of the serial meeting rule. But an example of that would be if one member were to communicate with another board member saying, you know, I'm planning to vote against adoption of our annual report because in my opinion, it's hiding some expenses or something like that. And then that person passes that information on to another person so that suddenly there is a quorum to take an action like that. That could be a violation of the Brown Act because essentially a meeting has occurred, a consensus has been reached outside of view of the public. Okay. Next page, Heidi, thanks. Okay, as I mentioned, we're all doing a lot more teleconferences for committee meetings and board meetings these days. But it's important to be aware that where a member is attending by teleconference, they must post their agenda at their location, and at least a quorum must participate from within the district. So like I've had board meetings where a board member might say be on vacation in Japan, and then they literally have posted the agenda on their door. And so that so long as there are sufficient members of the body who are in the district, this rule can be observed. Okay. So I mentioned a few minutes ago, moving on to slide 16, that the requirement for posting an agenda is 72 hours in advance of a regular meeting. This body has 4 regular meetings a year. If there were ever a need to convene a special meeting, then the requirement for posting a special meeting agenda would be 24 hours. A special meeting is unlikely to be scheduled for this body unless, the only situation I can imagine would be something like if there was business this body needed to take at a regular meeting and a quorum was not achieved, you might have to reschedule at a special. That would be an example of how that might occur. Okay. The board cannot act on non-agendized items unless a few very stringent requirements are met. Those would include emergencies, of course, but also items that had been where the need for the body to take action on the item had arisen after the posting of the agenda. In that case, the board could vote to add that item to the agenda. Again, not typically going to be the kind of situation that this body is going to be in, that you might need to add items to the agenda after or act on items that are not already agendized. Now we come to my favorite rule about the Brown Act, but I'll explain why. A common misperception is that a Brown Act meeting is an opportunity for the board, for the public to interact with the board, for the public to participate in, say, a town hall fashion with the board. That is not the case. Occasionally, sometimes we do have town hall meetings, but they're a different format and they don't fall under the Brown Act. A Brown Act meeting is a meeting of the body in public, not a public meeting. And this is important, I think, because these meetings, occurring at night like this, we're all donating our time, or you are all donating your time. You are engaged in important civic endeavors, but you have other needs. I'm sure families or other needs that you could otherwise be addressing with this time. We want to respect that time and treat it with consideration and value. We want to respect the public's time as well, and so it's really important to the operation of a Brown Act body's meeting that it flow efficiently. That the business at hand of the public is addressed and not derailed. So it's important that the public has an important role to play in public comment on, should be not on, not engaging in an ongoing dialogue with the committee members. Okay, next one. And that goes to the rule that the board has the right to control the agenda, public participation, limiting that participation, and adjourning or continuing the meeting. So you will typically see that, it goes to slide 20 here, that as we've already covered on this agenda, the public will be given the opportunity to provide public comment generally on items that are not agendized at the top of the meeting, as we've already done, and then have an opportunity at each agenda item to address that item. I think I've heard for tonight that we have neither comment on the non-agendized item or on any individual items, but that can, as Kevin noted, that has certainly happened in the past, where we have had members of the public who have commented on one or all of the agendized items at each agendized item, and that is the right of the public to do so. However, going back to slide 19, this body has the right to control the conduct of the meeting and to place limits on, for instance, the length of time that the public can address any one item. For instance, comment, I think we've done in the past with this body, limited public comment to 3 minutes, for instance, and that's very common and appropriate. Okay, and finally, on slide 21, I'll just sum up what I think I already covered, which is that we can obtain comment either on non-agendized items, on any item within the district's jurisdiction. Typically, as I said, it starts at the beginning. And at every meeting, we are required to seek comment from the public on each agenda item before consideration of that item by the committee member. So I know that's a pretty quick overview of the Brown Act. I'm happy to take questions, particularly as how Brown Act issues might arise for you all. Any questions?
Any questions from the committee?
I have a question.
There's one from Ms. Jones.
Go ahead.
Hi there, thank you. So could you review the part where you said that if I am out of the district during a meeting and perhaps participating online, you said something about posting the meeting outside my hotel room.
Right. Sure. So first of all, if you were going to participate remotely, I would want to make sure that you, obviously you're all remote to some, not all, many of you are remote today. I'd want to make sure that you had notified staff ahead of time so they know that, for purposes of county heads, making sure you have a quorum. But the Brown Act does require that you would then post the agenda in your location, just in case somebody wanders by and wants to participate in that public meeting where you happen to be sitting. Yeah.
I put a little sign up on my hotel door that I'm participating as a member of the.
Yeah.
That's
right.
Okay.
That's right. It does happen.
Yeah. Second question as well on slide 18. Let me just find that. Sorry. What is a board meeting? Yes, a meeting of the board is public. Some public meeting. There was a little technical difficulty here, and I might have missed.
Okay, sure. Yeah, no, and this is an important one, I think. A well-conducted Brown Act meeting, in my opinion, and have done this for a long time, is when you see the body in control of the interaction with the public, so that we take public comment in one location on the agenda. The public has an opportunity to be meaningfully heard, but the business that's being conducted is being conducted among the members of the body in an orderly fashion, rather than in a dialogue with the public, so that we can move through matters in an efficient and respectful manner. So that's the distinction that slide is trying to draw, is a meeting of this body that the public has a right to watch and participate in, but in a way that is prescribed by the agenda and under the control of this body, rather than, say, a town hall where everybody has the right to jump up and make comments that, as they go. Does that make sense?
Okay, thank you. That's much clearer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Is there any comment from the public? I think we're all set. Thank you, Devin, for giving us the regular review about how to follow the law, and we'll continue to be diligent about that as we continue on.
That sounds great. So you all, I'm gonna, I'll turn my screen off, but I'll continue to be listening in case any questions arise.
Thank you, Devin.
Thank you.
That's good. Thank you. All right, let's move on to item F. We're starting now the review of the financials and the warrant activity. So we will start with F, review financials for Measure P and project updates for funded by Measure P.
Great. Well, I think I can help with this. We start off on page 5, which is just the beginning of our quarterly report. So we typically do our quarterly reports in 2 sections. We do Measure I and Measure P separately. And we have, with Measure P, that's our old one from 2010, the bond initiative that we did in 2010. We had a little bit of money left in Series B, which was basically A, B, and C money. We call that, that was the first 3 issuances. And then we have a little bit of money left in Series D, and we'll show you that on the report. If I flip to page 7, it'll show you the overview of what we spent money on in the first quarter of the 2020-2021 year. So it'll be July 1st, which is the start of our fiscal year, and it ends on 9/30 of 2020.
Would we be able to get I took the packet and I put it through Adobe Acrobat to process it so everything would be right side up on this. Is there a way that you can adjust the screen so that the public can see the slides? There we go. Thank you.
Great. So this is just page 6. This is the overview of where the money has been spent. Page 7 is the actual beginning of the quarterly report. And we don't have a lot of projects still in Measure P. These are the only projects left in Measure P. And all but one of these are now closed. The only one that's currently open is Monterey High School, is the Monterey High School science classrooms. And we'll see that as we get into the expenditure reports. We've spent all of A, B, and C. We were very successful in getting that done last year. We had 1 expense in Measure C for this year, and you'll see that on the report. It was the final payment on one of our projects. Everything else will be Monterey High Science. So if we go into the first page of page 9, this is the format that we talked about. We have all of the companies listed, and we have what projects they did work on. And behind this, we have another set of expenditures that show what these same exact items, but they show them just specific for the project. So we were asked to provide the report that shows what we did by company. That's what this one is. But I think what we should probably go through is the expenditure report, which we'll find a little later on in the packet. It's right at page 19.
Yeah, I think that's good. Unless does somebody on the committee want to look in detail during this meeting at the contractor vendor report, or are we fine just going to page 19? I think it's good to have these reports sorted in this way, both for us and for the public.
Yes.
All right, well, let's go to 19 then, page 19, and start looking at the, okay, where the encumbrance report begins. For me, it's page 18, but let's go to that page.
Yeah, sorry, it is page 18. You're right, Mr. Dayton. So here you have the first project up is Hayes Culinary and what we spent on that. We're in the project closeout. And typically what we've done is we go through these pretty quickly. We ask the COC committee to look at any of these expenditures and see if they have any questions on them. If they do, I could try to help explain them with Jody's help. And we go through them pretty quickly. So
Let's do it.
Okay, so typically what Kevin would do is say, any questions on page 18?
Yes, so let's do that. And you'll see committee members on the left. If you have it right side up, you'll see on the left margin, you'll see each page. And we'll give you a few seconds for each one, and then I'll ask if anybody has any questions. So let's start with page 18.
Great.
Any questions? Moving on to 19. And we have here, just to clarify with the public, where it says MPUSD, this is the compensation for work that's performed by personnel directly related to the bond activities.
Correct. That would be Jody and myself.
Any questions on 19? Page 20. Any questions? Page 21.
You're doing great.
Page 22. Any questions? Page 23. Any questions? Page 24. Any questions? Page 25. Once again, we have MPUSD, which is personnel expenses related to the bond measure. Page 26. Any questions? Page 27.
Just a quick pause on page 27. What we do for Jody and my salary plus expenses associated with running an office, we spread them out to the projects at the end of the year. So we incorporate my salary and Jody's salary into the actual cost of the construction project, because we wouldn't be here if we didn't have a bond program running. So we try to capitalize all of our expenses that the bond creates into the actual project itself. So we'll move these through a journal entry at the end of each year, and the balance will be zero.
Yes, and for members of the public or committee members who have concerns, this is legal. There have been Attorney General opinions about this sort of thing. So once in a while, I'll have somebody in the public saying that isn't construction, but actually it is part of the construction program.
Correct. Thank you.
Also on page 27, could you explain RGM Kramer for the public and for new committee members?
Certainly. RGM Kramer Corporation is our project management firm that we've used to provide project management services and support. We have approximately 7 folks that work for RGM Kramer that work in my office. And we have one other consultant. I am the only district employee that works in my office, and Jody works in the finance department. She is a district employee. Everybody else has worked for RGM Kramer or another consulting firm. And this gives us the ability to staff up and staff down depending on our project load. So we don't have to lay people off when we don't have a lot of work, and we don't have to scramble to try to find somebody when we do have a lot of work. We can move these folks around within the RGM Kramer Corporation and not have them assigned to our project and save us some money.
Yes, and the board is fully aware of this. And in fact, I've spoken to the school board saying that this is a good way to handle construction and project management for bond measures. Some school districts have not done it this way, and I think this has helped to have made the bond program a success.
Yes, certainly. I agree. Thank you, Ken.
I have a question on that, please.
Go ahead.
Hi there, Shemaine Jones, questioning here. So, I'm just, a newbie. I'm seeing that these are the figures paid to RGM as of July 9. Is that correct?
Correct.
But this book goes through 10/1. So there have been no further charges between July and October for RGM?
That is correct. Their invoices are sitting on my desk.
Okay, so am I looking at a monthly fee that we're paying or a quarterly?
Neither. This was an accrual that we did for year end. This is what we paid at year end for the previous year's work. So when we don't have an invoice at the end of the year, we will set an accrual or liability that allows us to pay them in the new year, even though the work was done in the old year. These are all old years. 42,498 are last year's invoices.
Okay. And so, Mr. Anderson, is this typically a monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly? How much are we paying them per month, let's say?
Well, we're supposed to be paying them monthly when they submit invoices monthly. They have not submitted invoices monthly for the first quarter of this year. So we'll see those on the next report.
Can you tell me how much, on average, we paid them for the last year?
Well, as you can see, there's two different contracts they had with us last year. They had one for Measure P and they had one for Measure I. This is Measure P's monies, and they were on a flat $42,000 a month fee. And that contract ended on June 30th of 2020. That contract is no longer valid. Now they only have the Measure I with an addendum that went out for one Measure P project that they're working on, which is the Monterey High Science Project.
And it's a science project they haven't paid the invoice on yet, or sent you the invoice on yet?
No, they haven't sent us the invoice for July, August, or September yet.
And again, just because I'm new, I'm sorry, we should expect their monthly fees for the new bond to be about the same.
No, the new bond is a lot different. The structure of the new contract with RGM Kramer is we pay for the hours that they work on a project. We don't pay a flat fee. So they can be paid $50,000 in one month. They could be paid $70,000, $80,000, $100,000 in the next month. It's based on how many hours they worked within the month. And it's billed at per project, which you'll see on some of the Measure I stuff that comes up.
And one more clarification. You said this generally includes 7 people working for RMG.
Correct.
Yes, thank you.
Not a problem.
And
We have
just
4 project managers and 3 support staff.
And just for a point of clarification, when we say year in, the school district, we operate on a July 1 through June 30th fiscal year.
Correct.
Any questions about page 27? All right, now we'll move on to the Measure I overview.
Okay, so the first page of Measure I overview is basically page 26, which just shows you the cumulative revenue that we had to begin with, where we're at for spending. And then on page 29, we actually get into the expenditures per project. The thing to remember about Measure I Series A and Series B, we sold them at the same time. Measure I Series A is short term. So this is 5 to 10 money. This is where you'd spend money on stuff that isn't going to last 30 years. So on Measure I Series B, that's long-term money. That's 30-year money. So we try to use construction for Measure B and furniture equipment for Series A. That makes sense for everyone? We basically, homeowners on Measure I, Series A, they're going to only pay for that on their homeowners' property tax for 10 years, where Series B will be paid for 30 years. There's no sense buying stuff that is not going to be around in 30 years and having folks pay for it 20 years after it's lived its shelf life. So that's why we have two different series, one for short-term money and one for long-term money.
And I'm
So
sorry.
A will be short-term.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Question?
We're having a little, I can't hear Mr. Anderson, and the question I was going to ask, he was reinstating, and I still couldn't answer it. So the Series A specifically spent on what?
Series A is short-term money and typically 10 years. And Series B is long-term money, 30 years.
Thank you.
And to explain this to the public, when you sell a bond, what you're doing is you're borrowing money from investors. And then you make a commitment to pay that bond, that borrowed money back over time with interest. And it can be for different time periods. And
Correct.
It might make sense, for example, like a mortgage to do borrow for a 30-year payback period for a structure that's going to stay up for a long time. If you buy something that's only going to last a few years, it doesn't make much sense. Doesn't make sense to borrow with a 30-year payback period for something that only lasts 2 or 3 years. So the school district has wisely arranged to have its bonds sold so that they have the short-term, short borrowing payback period for short-term things, and then the more traditional 30-year bonds for facilities that are going to last a long time. And
Correct.
School board members have asked about this before because they hear that some school districts are using 30-year bonds for things that are used up in a couple years, and that is not being done at the school district. There are some school districts that actually have special bond measures just for short-term material, but this school district decided that they were just going to do their Series A with short-term bonds. And I've looked at the records of the bond sales, and that is exactly what they did.
Correct.
One more
Correct.
clarification then, either Kevin or Paul, again, just because of sound wobbliness. Short-term would include things like furniture and what else?
Equipment. You'll see when we go through the expenditures.
Okay. All right,
You'll
thank
get
you.
examples as we go through the expenditures of what we're spending it on, and hopefully it'll fit a pattern.
Any questions about page 29? Moving on. For the Monterey High School lower field, number 13, could you explain what that expense is for?
So these are the project totals per project for the quarter, and then behind it you'll see when we get into the expenditures what they'll total.
Well, we'll do that. Any questions on 30? 31?
So then we'd probably want to jump, if we have no questions on 31, we'd probably want to jump to page 80, Heidi, which is the beginning of the expenditures by project.
And as the public can see, there's a lot more expenditures, of course, for Measure I, because Measure P was pretty much used up, and now this new proceeds from the bond measure are being spent.
I'm too far ahead, sorry about that.
All right, is everybody at page 80? Let's begin.
Okay.
Any questions on page 80?
Here I am again, Charmaine.
Okay, go ahead.
Could you tell me what the signage is? What are the signs reading?
Your bond dollars at work, there's posted at every school site, and the work that we've done at the school sites are listed on the signs. We just put up new signs for Measure I and Measure P all over the district.
And is this something that's required for the bond?
No, it's not required. It's a way to tell the people as they're dropping the children off what we're doing at that school and what we've accomplished or what we will accomplish, what we have accomplished, not what we will.
And these signs just promote the bond expenditure. Do they promote the contractors as well?
No, the contractors' names are not on our signs. The only thing on our signs are our projects.
Okay, thank you.
Paul, maybe the committee would be interested in, maybe the district could send over some examples of those signs. I've taken pictures of every one of them that it's in the city of Monterey, and I think they're an important tool to remind people that they voted for this bond measure and the money is being spent this way. It's a good way to keep everybody accountable and to remind people about. It's hard to believe, actually the school district did a survey, I think about 1.5 years ago, of people who lived in the district, and it was only a year after Measure I had been approved, and something like 30% of the people didn't even remember that anything had been done. They claimed in the survey that no bond money had been approved for 10 years.
Correct.
So it's really surprising. People, I think, just emotionally vote for this when they see it on the ballot in 5 seconds, and then they forget they ever did it. So I think this is obviously a board decision, but I think it's good, an administration decision. I think it's good to have these signs up at each campus.
Yeah, we have the signs on the campus. We also have fact sheets, which are per the projects that are on our website. And we do a monthly newsletter that gets blasted out that shows what we're doing on construction projects all over the district.
Does everybody on the committee get that bulletin? If anybody doesn't, let's make sure.
Jermaine does not.
Okay. All right, let's make sure everybody on the committee is getting those bulletins.
Is that because I'm new that I'm not receiving it? Do I need to go onto your website, Paul, and get it that way, or what do you suggest?
We'll make sure the newsletters are on our website. The fact sheets are on our website as well, but you should get them when we send out the email blast. I believe we do Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I forget what else Marcy uses, but it's a whole host of social media that we send to.
I'm only interested. I don't use social media.
We'll get you on the email.
Yep.
When was that sent?
We'll make sure that everybody, all of the COC members are added to the list for email.
Thank you.
I think the last one came out about 1.5 weeks ago.
Correct. It was the one.
Okay.
It was the one from October. We just finished.
Okay.
Any questions about page 80? Page 81. Any questions? Page 82. Any questions? Page 83. Any questions? Page 84. Any questions? Page 85. Any questions? Page 86. Any questions? Page 87. Any questions? Page 88. Any questions? Page 89. Any questions?
I'm sorry, so we have two companies making signs, Monterey Sign Company and SD Bender. I'm a little confused on those two different kinds of signs.
They're not. Susan Bender is the project manager.
Oh,
So that's a portion of her salary charged to keep working on the sign creation, so.
Correct.
so that's design.
Somebody had to make sure the sign got put in and got put in the right spot and got manufactured. And she was the project manager that made it happen.
No spelling errors. Also, you got to make sure they aren't stolen too.
Okay, so to clarify, she's the designer or the poster of the sign?
She's a
Neither,
project
she's a
manager.
project manager.
You'll see her name listed. She's a project manager that, outside of RGM, she's a separate project manager that oversees various different projects from RGM.
And then we actually purchased the signs from Monterey Sign.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct, and they did the install.
okay, thank you.
Page 90. Any questions? Page 91. Any questions? Page 92. Any questions? Page 93. Any questions? Page 94. Any questions? And by the way, just for the public, that Commercial Solutions Group, the word commercial is spelled that way.
Yeah, it's not spelling error.
We've talked about that before. Page 95. Any questions? Page 96. Any questions? Page 97. So there is here Signworks, different company from Monterey Signs. Is that something different than the bond program signs?
I'm sorry, for which one?
You'll see here Signworks expense from July 29th. Is that signage different than the bond program signs that Monterey Signs is doing?
I can check that for you. I don't know.
Let's see what category is. That's Marina Del Mar Color Consulting. Okay. Maybe that's for, it's not important. I was just asking. Maybe that's signs for a particular project. Page 98. Any questions? Page 99. Any questions? Page 100. And in case anybody had any questions from the public, Monterey County Herald, by law, you have to advertise bid invitations in a newspaper.
So Kevin, just to help you clarify, I looked it up. The Signworks is actually our marquee sign that we put on Marina Child Care Center. So that's a marquee sign, not a bond sign.
Okay, great. Figured so.
Yep. Okay.
Any questions about page 100?
Actually, can we go back to that marquee sign?
Okay, let's go. What is this? Page 97.
I'm
Sign
seeing-
works.
Yeah, I'm seeing three expenditures for 16,488. They don't come up, and this is just me not knowing how to read this. They don't come up to 234.28. So what number are we looking at for that marquee sign?
Can you please clarify the page number you're on?
This is number 97.
Thank you.
And the expenditure is 16,000?
Well, I see three entrances for 16,488, and then what looks like a total of 234.28. That's
That's the sum of all category on the encumbrances for that. So if you add up for Marina Del Mar, if you go back to page 96, if you add up the project totals, that's the total of that particular.
oh, because that's the end of that
Yeah.
particular. Oh, I see. Right. So we're looking at 60,000, almost $500 for a marquee sign.
That was the cost of that particular.
Yeah. That's one of those electronic marquee signs that you see that you're able to program.
Now you're getting an idea of what public works construction costs. People are always surprised. All right, we'll move on from page 100 to page 101.
Only 33 pages left, Kevin. You're doing good.
Hey, great. Well, I'll tell you, this chart is clear and easy to follow, and that's what we're looking for.
Yep.
Definitely, over time, the charts have become very useful.
Good, good.
Page 101, any questions? Page 102. Any questions? Page 103. Any questions? Page 104. Any questions? Page 105. Any questions? Page 106. Any questions? Page 107. Any questions? Page 108. Any questions? Page 109. Any questions? Page 110. Any questions? Page 111. Any questions? Page 112. Any questions? Page 113. Any questions? Page 114. Any questions? Page 115. Any questions? Page 116. All right, here is where we have the Monterey High School lower field. Ascent Environmental is the environmental review, correct?
They're the consultant that we're using to do our EIR. Environmental impact report for the lower field.
Any questions about page 116? Page 117. Any questions? Page 118. Any questions? Page 119. Any questions? Page 120. Any questions? Page 121. Any questions? Page 122. Any questions? Page 123. Any questions? Page 124. And I'm assuming here now MPUSD, we're now getting into personnel reimbursements again, correct?
Correct.
Any questions? Page 125. Any questions? Page 126. Any questions? Data center upgrades, is this related to improvements to deal with the virtual meetings and virtual education?
Which one are you on, Kevin?
It's item on page 126-090-8200, district office data center upgrades.
Yeah, this was, we rebuilt a district IT department's brain. Their main network is at the DSC, the District Service Center. And this was redoing their network room and putting in new racks and equipment and proper air conditioning and fire suppression system to support everything in our district. Everything runs through that one network room.
Good, and these sort of things are important for the district operations, especially when everything is virtual right now.
Correct, exactly.
So, I think the school district has done much better than many other districts in handling that technology.
Well, luckily we had this planned, and we did this work beginning last year, and we had it done before the pandemic started.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Page 127.
So my question would be that, all of these technology updates from CW are concentrated here in the district office for $841,000 and change? Am I reading that right?
You are on page 126?
Yes, 27, well,
127.
20, yeah, it looks like 126 runs into 127.
Different projects, so
Oh,
student
laptops.
Student laptops, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Any questions about page 127? Anybody care to know about the California Debt and Investment Advisory Commission? Moving on, page 128. Paul, could you explain spread holding district office 090-8244 for the public and committee members?
Yeah, again, this is their spread. We have spread in each of our categories, bond funds. And so again, this is the cost associated with operating the bond office that will, at the end of the year, be moved from this holding account 8244 and be put into each of the individual projects. So this account will be zeroed at the end of the year.
Any questions on page 128? Page 129. Any questions? Page 130.
I'm sorry, can I ask about 129?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question too.
What did we get to buy?
I'm not sure what that question is.
So,
Page 129,
Yes?
downtown port sales, 8207.
those
Okay.
are vehicles in operations department.
So did we get to buy new ones or just
Correct.
maintenance?
For these particular vehicles were used for the maintenance and operations, for the painters, carpentry, HVAC, those sorts of operations fall in maintenance and operations. And those are replacement vehicles for that department.
Yeah, they're M&O vehicles. Maintenance and operations.
Someone else had a question about 129?
That was the same line item that I was going to mention. Thank you.
Sure.
Page 130. Any questions? Page 131. Any questions? Page 132. Any questions? Page 133. And there's your grand total. 8.6 million. Any questions about the expenditures? Let's, before we get to the annual report, are there any public comments about the financials and warrant activity for Measure P and Measure I?
There is no public. I just wanted to clarify, Mr. Dick, that review was item F, G, H, and I on the agenda.
Yes.
Correct.
All right, now we're up to any question? Go ahead. All right, let's move on to item J on the agenda. Approve annual report for 2018-2019 fiscal year. This starts at 134. Staff?
So I'll provide some background just for the new members. So the one item that the COC is tasked with, the one thing that you do produce outside of reviewing the expenditures for the bond, is actual annual report that's submitted to the school board. And that's you certifying that the expenditures for that fiscal year, in this case we're reviewing 18-19 fiscal year, that the expenditures in there were appropriate in accordance to your review with the bond language. This report was reviewed in draft form at the last COC meeting we had August 13th. There were some few minor corrections, so this is being brought back to the committee to adopt this financial report for 18-19, or fiscal, the report for 18-19, which would then be submitted to the school for their review.
So I would think that we would be reviewing 1920 at this point in the fall of 2020. Why are we a year and a quarter behind?
Because the 1920, we're in 18-19, 1920 fiscal year just ended in July. So it always takes us, we have to go back, we go through an audit process. We always look back a year. So we are starting to work on 1920, and you will be getting that probably within the next meeting or two to review and with along the same timeline.
Thank you.
Correct.
I did see an error that needed to be fixed on this, so let me see if I can find it here. It's a reference. Oh yeah, here it is. When you go on, go to page 180 and afterwards, you'll see it says you'll have references from this page on saying Measure I, short-term projects, long-term projects. But it says at the top above it, 2010 general obligation bond measure. That should be 2018.
Yes, that is correct. We'll fix that.
So that's, yeah, 180, 181. All the pages afterwards, it all has 2010 when it should say 2018.
Okay, we will definitely fix that.
So where is the report? From 135 on?
Yes, so from 134 is the cover sheet for the annual report, and then on the pages following are the actual report, and that's activity for the entire fiscal year. So you review the other ones just for the
Committee, do you want to just go quickly through each page? And we'll just ask if there are any questions or maybe
yeah.
error that somebody missed. Okay, let's do that. 134, cover page.
There, 1 second.
Oh, hold, we're waiting. Okay. Let me know when you're ready.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Ready.
So we just reviewed the cover page 134 and now 135. And notice that the paragraph here, this is the language that was on the 2010 ballot measure, correct?
Correct.
Any questions about page 135? And keep in mind, this is now a couple years old, so you're seeing some statistics that are not up to date compared to what we just looked at. Okay, page 136. Any questions? Page 137. Any questions? Page 138. Any questions? Page 139. Any questions? Now, one thing I haven't done on this is checked the math for the columns. Did you use Excel and have those been looked over?
These reports are put together for us from Key Analytics, California Financial Services. And yes, we confirm their reports equal everything that's in Escape.
Good.
They take a download from Escape and create these reports for us. And then we just compare to, Jody and I compare the reports to Escape.
Yeah, we don't want any board members to discover a math error during the presentation. Okay, page 140. Any questions? Page 141. Any questions? Page 142. For 142, where you have the, you may not be able to change this. Notice you have the items 8205, 8209, 8233 for the Seaside Children's Center. If you could add the apostrophe into the 8029 and 8025 under children's like you did with 8033, just for consistency, that would be great. Just a typographical issue. Any questions on 142? 143. Same thing here with a typographical issue for Seaside Children's Center.
Kevin, we'll check on that, but these descriptions come right out of Escape. So if they're wrong in Escape, they'll be wrong in every project.
Yeah, I figured. You know,
We'll check it, and we can always correct it going forward.
Right.
Got it noted.
Any questions on 143? 144? Any questions? 145? Any questions? 146? Any questions? 147? Any questions? 148? Any questions? 149? Any questions? 150? Any questions? 151? Any questions? All right, now we're up to 152 and some summaries of projects. Let's look at number 142. And once again, for consistency's sake, I wouldn't mind where it says locker rooms, where it says Marina High School Gymnasium with new team and locker rooms, if we could capitalize the word rooms like the rest of the words.
Okay.
Any questions? Page 153. Any questions? 134.
154, right?
Yeah, 154. I wish board members would take these pages and show them to people in the community. Any questions for 154? 155. Any questions? 156. Any questions? 157. Any questions? 158. Any questions? 159. Now we're up to the 2000 the Measure I overview. Any questions on 159? 160. Any questions? 161.
Sorry, on 160,
Yes.
is Del Monte School Campus Improvements number 6016? Is that Del Monte spelled properly?
Good catch.
Just all of a sudden looking at it, isn't that supposed to be an E instead of a Y?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, can we have that fixed?
We can try.
That would be good.
It's like spelling Monterey with 2 R's.
Yeah.
Good catch.
The funny thing is, the Del Monte School campus is really Marina Daycare Development Center. It hasn't been Del Monte Elementary School for, I think, 15 years, 10 years.
So, yeah, Del Monte is actually the Bayview.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
That's
Bay.
right.
Yep.
It's Monterey. Okay.
If there's any way we can get that item title changed, and you may not be able to because you're a database, let's update it.
Well, it actually had it in the section below. It actually said spelled it correctly. I think I'm not looking at page 160 anymore. Wait, am I?
Yeah,
Yes,
no,
actually it does. It says it.
correctly underneath.
Correct.
Okay.
Great. Well, let's either get the spelling done or get the item updated to what the facility is called today.
Okay.
Good catch. 161. Any questions? 162. Any questions? 163. Any questions? 164. Any questions? 165. Once again, well, for items 47 and 48, if you can stick the apostrophe in before the S in children's for consistency, that would be good. $166. Any questions? Okay, here's the expenditure backup for Measure I, 2018, starting with 167. Any questions? 168. Any questions? 169. Any questions? 170. Any questions? 171. Any questions? 172. Any questions? 173. Any questions? 174. Any questions? 175. Any questions? 176. Any questions? 177. Any questions? 178. Any questions? 179. Any questions? Here's 188, which shows the projects, and as we mentioned before, we're going to get that changed to 2018 general obligation bond measure. Page 180. And there's one of the buses we must have taken for our tour of facilities.
Correct.
Any questions? Page 181. Any questions? on page 181 for play structures, if for the title play structures, if you could capitalize the S for consistency.
Got it, Kevin.
Page 182. Any questions? Page 183. Any questions? Page 184. Any questions? Page 185. Any questions? All right, last page, 186. Camera shy projects.
Well, we wanted to take credit for some of the projects we did do that we didn't have a lot of great pictures for. I started in November of 2018, and we were not in the habit of taking pictures before, during, and after all the time, but now we are. So that's why we have a much better pictures.
That's great. On these, where it says portable removal at various sites, paving at various sites, those bullet points, if you could capitalize various in sites for consistency.
Okay.
Any questions on page 186? All right, we're done with this review, and that means we need to have a vote to, well, let's first take public comment. Any public comment on approved annual report for 2018-2019 fiscal year?
There is no comment.
All right, well, this is great. I'm looking forward to having the board see this, and you know what? If anybody asks, we can say the Oversight Committee goes through all these reports page by page. We're very diligent. I'm sure anybody who's watching on YouTube must be really bored, but we do our job. All right, is there a motion on approved annual report for 2018-2019 fiscal year?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, let's do a roll call vote. Heidi?
Kevin Dayton,
Aye.
Carmel York,
Aye.
Dorothy Emerson,
Aye.
Richard Pagnello, Dawn Avila, Adam Gonzalez, Evelyn Thomas,
Aye.
Jermaine Jones.
Abstain?
Great, it's off to the board. And what date will this be before the board, do you anticipate?
That will be up to the superintendent as he sets the meetings with the board. It may go as a board report, and then as an item. I'm not sure if it's going to be an action item or how the board would like to receive it, but we'll notify you on how that, the direction the superintendent gets from the board.
Great, I might want to public comment publicly on that, participate in that particular item, and maybe other committee members would like to as well. All right, item K, future meeting dates for 2021. Any questions on those?
This has been the meeting schedule. It's the first Wednesday of each quarter. So these are the dates that would fall in line with how we have been holding meetings every quarter. February 4th, 2021, May 5th, 2021, August 4th, 2021, and November 3rd, 2021. It's difficult to say 2021.
Yeah.
It works.
February 4th, 2021 meeting, do you expect we'll have the annual report for 2019-2020, or will that be a later meeting?
That would probably be too early to have it in February 4th.
Okay. Item L, committee member comments. Does anyone have any comments?
I do, here. As a new member, where do you direct me to go to find out things, structural things like how the board approves the projects, when they approve the projects, you know, so I can go back to understand when the board has taken action on these funds to track it better.
Well, I'll take a shot at this, and then staff can do it. I every week check the website. If you go to the main page, you'll see board agendas, and you can go to that and pull it up. And you know, they have regular meetings every couple weeks on Tuesdays, and you can look at the agendas when they come up, and it's all good to check every week because on a rare occasion they may have a special meeting. And then you go down it, it's a long agenda, and you'll see various projects listed for approval, or there will be presentations or other things that facilities staff make. And I think the agenda does a good job of explaining to people what's going on with the facilities. And sometimes board members have some good, tough questions to ask too about it. So I would encourage everybody on the committee to be always looking at the board agendas.
So Kevin, can I clarify? I'm wanting to go historically to understand, you know, what projects, for instance, on Measure I, have been approved historically in the past, to get current with what has been approved and how they approved it, and like, is there some records on that that are easy for me to find?
I'll let staff answer if there's any other records. What I would probably do if I were asked that would be to go to the page with all the agendas and put Measure I in the search engine and see what comes up, or put in the name of a specific project that I had. And the search engine works, it will pull up all of the agendas, and then you hit the meeting item, and then a box comes up showing the actual item. So it has a good search engine. But maybe staff can talk about a source that compiles that, so you don't have to go through all that work.
So none of the projects happen without board approval. So
say that again.
So all the projects that happen, they happen with board approval.
Right.
It's not something I or the
Right.
society, right? Board, the projects come before the board, they vote to approve that project, and then that's how we proceed forward. With some rare circumstances for emergencies and things like that. But in general, projects are approved by the board before any action is taken on the project. For past project approvals, they are, Mr. Dayton is correct, they are all on the district's board meeting website. Every action the board has taken, every project they have approved would show up there. Now, they're not all in one meeting, depending on when the project was approved. It could be a year ago, it could be 2 years ago, it just depends on when the project. There is a search function on there. If you type in, say, Measure I, that would list anything that had the words Measure I in it, which would outline, and those are expenditures or projects that were funded from Measure I. And then the same thing for Measure P, you do the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
I would probably, as somebody who does this a lot, you know, you put Measure I, you're going to have a huge thing. I'd probably say, which projects do I want to specifically know about? For example, if I wanted to know about the Measure I funded nutritional services walk-in freezer, I would probably put in the word freezer, because you know you're not going to have a lot of items coming up before the board that involve freezers. So you'll probably pull up right off the bat when that project was discussed. And if you really want to know about it, you know, if you look at the minutes and you see there was discussion, you can go to the video archive.
Okay, thank you, Kevin.
Any other questions? Well, great. 6:58. We managed to get the meeting in, and it's 2-hour intended time, on budget. So we always like that. And the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for participating.
Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Thank
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.